Talk with Jon here on Main Street Media, Utah. I'm looking forward to being with you for roughly the next 2 hours. I'll be introducing my guests momentarily, but I'm so grateful to be here with you today. I will also be giving out a call-in line should anybody want to take me up on it. But I have 23 questions for my guest. As those of you that have been watching Talk with Jon know, I have had a number of the candidates for the races for state offices. State offices across the state of Utah. It's the Republican convention Saturday. If you're a delegate like me, you need to show up. Look forward to seeing you there. But I'm going to bring on a candidate that's running. But first, before we do that, today is Tuesday, March 23rd, 2024. It's roughly 4 o'clock, and I am looking forward to being with you. Now, I do want to give out my show prayer, as it were, and my show mantra. Let me start with the show prayer. No need to bow your head, close your eyes. It's just the prayer of my heart. And that is, I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra that I try to keep in mind when doing the show is, where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Now, that's taken throughout places throughout Scripture, as well as Article 7. Now, let me introduce and slow down just a smidgen, but not too much. Phil Lyman joining us. Phil Lyman has been a state representative in the state of Utah. One of the ones with the absolute best track record in the state. Lowell Nelson. Now, those of you that watch this show know that I also have a show on K-Talk Radio, on KBJA AM 1640 that goes out of along the Wasatch Front. And today, Lowell Nelson said that Phil Lyman is one of only two people that you should even think about considering for the state governor's race. And Phil Lyman, he said, has the best voting record in quite some time. And Phil Lyman was the first one that he mentioned. Me personally, I'm a big fan of Phil Lyman, and I am so grateful that he is here with me today. So, Phil Lyman, I asked him to come on. I wanted to run him through my gauntlet of questions. But first, Phil, thank you for joining me. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Jon. It's great to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. Now, next question for you is, should someone want to find out more about you, more about your campaign, or donate, where would they go to do that?
The website is Lyman for Utah, and it's FOR, Lyman, FOR, Utah.com. All
right, Phil. Thank you for joining us. So let's get into the 23 plus questions. And the other thing that's going to be great about this is I'm going to post it to Twitter. We're also on Rumble, Main Street Media. So Main Street Media Utah is on KMMU.org is our website. You can watch us live or watch past shows there. You can go to Rumble. You can go to YouTube. And you can go to X or Twitter at Main Street Media is our Twitter handle. So look forward to having you on. And folks, you can rewatch this. And I will also tweet out, if I remember correctly, Phil's on Twitter, so I'll tweet him out when this show is posted. All right. First question. Phil, what qualifies you for running for the office of governor of the state of Utah?
Well, I am of age and I live in Utah, so there's that. So I meet the technical requirement. But as far as being the governor, as a county commissioner for 8 years, in the legislature for the last 6 years, I'm a certified public accountant by trade. A little firm in Blanding, but we've done some really big things. Very involved with businesses down there in the energy sector, and that's kind of what got me into politics. Initially, was seeing basically the nonsense of the federal government and the collusion with environmental groups and large corporations to make some really bad policy that affected my community and my clients in a negative way. And Anyway, so I got in. I got in for the fight. Got in to stand up for states' rights and to push back against what I saw as some really kind of the weaponized federal agencies.
Okay, so there is someone that is the current governor of the state of Utah who is also running for this office. Question number 2 is office holder not be retained? And then there's a second part to the question. Why should it be you? So first question, why do someone goes, I'm going to run for a office that someone is already there and running for. What they're doing, one thing that they're doing is standing up and saying, folks, I'm convinced I'm a better candidate. What would you share with our audience on that thought?
So the current governor, from my observation, both as a commissioner when he was the lieutenant governor and now in the legislature with him as a governor, he seems to see power as a top-down dynamic. It looks to the federal government. He kind of bows to the Biden administration. He panders to them. He take this sanctuary state deal that we're working with right now on illegal immigration. He acts like his hands are tied when it comes to federal regulation because the federal government is somehow over the state. And then on the flip side of that, he feels like the governor's office is over the counties and over the legislature and over the people of the state. So by contrast, I believe in a Republican form of government where the power flows from the people upwards, and that those who are elected representatives are there to do a job and to represent the people, not to preach to them, not to dictate to them, but to protect their liberties and their safety and their freedom. And so that's, I think fundamentally, from my observation, Spencer Cox and I are very different in our approach to that. The other thing that I think differentiates us is I truly, in my heart, the American dream is to have a home and a family and a car and be able to pay my mortgage and to see my kids grow up happy. And his pursuits are always for bigger companies, billion-dollar deals, pushing money to his friends, power to his friends, getting Major League Baseball into the state, NHL into the state, the Olympics, the presidential debates. It doesn't matter. He seems to always be chasing something big and shiny for Utah, and to me, that's just not what appeals to me at all.
How can I become one of his friends? Do you have any inside information?
Well, you can.
I'll take him. I'll take Phil. I'll take a very small. Just send me $100,000, Spencer Cox. Send me $100,000 deal somehow, and guess what? I will even say no. I won't say vote for you. I can't be sold, but I'll be one of your friends. I'll be one of your friends. Okay. So why you? I get not him. Oh, actually, I do want to throw this in. I had it on K Talk Radio. I had a candidate for office, and he said this about Spencer Cox, and I do want to point this out because, like I said, you're only one of two choices, and I'll guarantee you one of those two is not Spencer Cox that even possibly should be considered. Spencer Cox not considered. Something that he pointed out. He stated when he was interviewed, candidate for office, was you vote for Spencer Cox, you're voting for the attorney general to be put underneath him. You vote for Spencer Cox, you're voting for the state auditor to be put underneath him. You vote for Spencer Cox, you're looking to have many other things, including the state school board, put underneath him. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, the proposal to appoint the treasurer, the auditor, the attorney general, and even the school board, to me, demonstrate king-like aspirations that should disqualify a person from holding public office. There's things that I watch Spencer do almost every week that I think he cannot expect the people of Utah to elect him after doing what he's done, whether it's, using his pronouns or toasting Joe Biden with the deep bow, climate, um, civilian climate corps, state of the state address, vetoing bills that keep boys out of girls sports. I mean, and it just continues to go on. The you serve network of basically turning philanthropy into a state monitored activity. There are so many things that I look at that I think this person cannot be elected to office.
So why you? I know you said what qualifies you for the office, but why you?
Well, so you go through life. You do certain things that bring you to a certain place. I never wanted to pursue a career in politics by any means. I always told my wife that I could do a lot more good as a businessman than I could ever do as in politics. But when I saw again the Bureau of Land Management raid my community in 2009, I thought this is not right, and I felt I had a duty and obligation to get involved. It's kind of the Declaration of Independence says, when you see a long train of usurpations and abuses pursuing, an objective, which is to take the liberty of the people, you have your right and a duty to act. And I feel like I have a right and a duty to act. It might seem a little bit, in my own mind, it seems a little bit kind of like hubris to think that you could be the governor. But for whatever reason, in the legislature, I found myself kind of being the antithesis so often of the woke ideologies of Spencer Cox, and I felt a duty to run. I think I would. I trust people more than I trust government. If people like personal liberty and individual responsibility, they would get a lot. They would get a lot more of that, and definitely a lot more respect from me than they do from the current governor.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I know that Phil. I've known Phil for well over 2 years. Interacted with him a fair amount. I've interviewed him a fair number of times, and according to Phil, off camera, I'm going to bring an off-camera conversation and off audio conversation into the realm of the virtual realm, as it were. According to Phil, I was one of the first people that told him he needed to run for governor back in 2022. I said, Phil, we need you. Now, I may not have been the first one, but according to him, I was one of the first ones that did. And his immediate, I know the difference between, some of the audience may know, I'm in business to business sales. So I know when I'm being sold. And I've had a lot of people go, oh, I don't want to do that. His answer was a very clipped, no, I have no desire to do that, John. And bottom line is, I know that he was pushed to do it. So folks, when he says that people came to him and said, hey, I want you to get into politics, I think you can take that to bank. All right. So number 3, what is the most important thing you would do as governor for the state of Utah?
The executive branch, the governors, in the executive branch, and it's a really important branch. It's a really powerful branch. But if it will stay in its lane, if it just restrict its activities to executive level functions, it would do much better. Right now, we've got a governor who really branches out into drafting legislation. Last year, for example, we got 8 water bills. Most of them came from what we call the UEOC, the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. And you track that back, that's the governor. It's a bunch of executive agency heads and some community people getting together and drafting legislation. It's unconstitutional. It makes for bad policy. There's a lot of coercion, I think, that goes into it with the House leadership and the Senate leadership. And I would like to see the legislative branch or the executive branch stay the executive branch. I'd like a stronger legislative branch. I empower the legislators to make good laws and tell them that if you bring us laws, if I'm the governor, I would say, if you bring me a law that is delegating a lot of the rulemaking authority to the executive branch, go back and do it right, make something that works. So good, strong branch government. And then in the spirit of federalism, I would definitely be pushing more power to the counties, and empowering them to do what they were designed to do as subunits of the state government, and also pushing back against the federal government to make them stay in their lane to their delegated powers. And you put all those things, you put the federalism and the branches of government in their proper places, and it serves the people extremely well. It provides that. Madison talked about it in Federalist 51. Dividing the government up and then dividing those two divisions into various departments, and that serves to protect the liberties of the people. And I would definitely do that. I'd love to see the government in a really tight structure, everybody doing exactly what they're supposed to do and not doing all the things that they're not supposed to do. I think that gets rid of the cronyism that we see and some of the corruption that we see.
All right, let's go to question 4. When was the last time you read the Constitution, both Utah Constitution and the federal Constitution?
So I did read the Utah Constitution in January. Usually, I try to read the Constitution every January 1st, and I did read the Utah Constitution shortly after that. As soon as the session started up, the U.S. Constitution, I read it in full January 1st. But I keep a copy of it in my pocket, and I refer to it often.
Okay. Is it the place for government to have to ask American citizens and to ask for the state government to ask Utah citizens if there was, say, perhaps a 5% death rate? Hey, we need to tell you what to do in your lives. You need to not go to church. You need to not to get together. You need to not go shopping, and you need to stop going to school for kids, and you need to stop going to work. With the 5% death rate, is that the place for government?
No, absolutely not. And we've seen governments that take upon themselves the role of I guess dictator, dictating what people will do, and the truth is the government gets it wrong so often. People closest to the effects of the decisions should be the ones making those decisions, and nowhere is that more true with our own than with our own health and our family's health.
Let's see. Question number 6. When a group of people or persons ask you to run a bill, support a bill, and you just said a little bit about that, and I'm happy to let you come back, or whether you will decide to support a bill, how are you going to make that decision? What's your decision-making process?
Definitely, is it constitutional? And I guess for me personally, it would be, is it deferential to the federal government or to some external entity, the United Nations, World Economic Forum? And if it's not constitutional, if it's deferential to people that I deem to not have our best interest at heart, I would not vote for that bill. If it's spending money that shouldn't be spent, if it's outside the proper role of government, if it doesn't promote the health, safety, welfare of the people of the state of Utah, then I would not be looking to vote for that. Or if it looks like it's favoring one group over another group, picking winners and losers, that's a real sensitive topic for me. So there's probably a few other things, but those are the ones that come to mind.
What do you mean by picking winners and losers? How do you decide if something like that is happening?
Well, so many bills do that. For example, the housing bill that was passed this last legislative session, giving $300 million to address the housing crisis. I like developers, and I admire the work that they do, but when we vote to give $300 million to developers, you know that there are developers who are going to be more in line to receive that money than other developers, and probably it's going to be based on their relationship to the ultimately the decision makers. So it's going to be big Wasatch Front developers who are building high density, low income housing, which is what the state's pushing. And for those that are out in the off the Wasatch Front trying to build single family homes, they are going to be excluded. So that would be picking winners and losers in that situation. And almost every bill has some element of people who are going to be more affected than others, either positive or negatively. But when we're dishing out money like that, that's definitely picking winners.
LGBT, trans athletes, woke, the woke nature that's, it's a big concern with my audience. They have concerns about it. I'm going to give a scenario that happened within my own family. I have a son who graduated 2 years ago, this coming May, from high school. And he came home his senior year. Now, my son, big boy. There was no one in that school that would, mess with him. And but he came to me and he said, "Dad, I don't know how to handle this situation." He goes, he goes, "When I was going into a bathroom, a girl just came out of the girl's bathroom." So I happen to know what the equivalent of the superintendent happens to be. I happen to know him personally. And I went up to him and I said, "Okay, can I tell you about a scenario that just happened?" And he goes, "You know what, John? Um, I'm aware of that situation." He goes, "Here's the difficult situation." He goes, "I can see how McKay's uncomfortable. But if they were in a locker room, your daughters now would be more uncomfortable with that young woman who is now a young man than your son is." And I went, "Holy cow." So, transing the kids has to do with it too. So that is, trans athletes, LGBT, and the woke policies that, I'm sorry, Spencer Cox is getting his pronouns out. He seems to be supporting. Your
Right.
thoughts?
It's really interesting. We get in these things, John, as you well know, and things that really are like day-to-day operational dilemmas turn into political talking points, and they become, well, what are you going to say about this? Abortion is famous for that. Gun control is famous for that.
We'll
And
be
now
getting
we've
to those.
yeah. So now we take trans rights. We say, all right, what's your political position on this? When what the reality is your son felt uncomfortable in the bathroom with this individual, and if if that individual got into the girls' bathroom, they've may have felt uncomfortable. Well, honest people have rights too. The average normal person that is out there has a right to be in the bathroom without having an opposite sex person in the bathroom with them. So who bears the responsibility in that situation? And it's the person who made the choices to become a trans person. My bill that I was running this last year said that in our public schools that they had to provide a unisex bathroom for people, and it was incumbent on them to use the unisex bathroom. And I don't think that's unfair. It's not unfeeling. It's not unkind. What it is addressing the privacy issues of people who have not transitioned, who are the same sex that they were born with. And I think that's really a fundamental thing, is that I say honest people have rights too, and the only hope they have is that other honest people will stand up for them. So that's what we do as legislators. That's what we do as parents. As we say, I see you, I hear you. If you're a trans person, I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to evaluate you, but you have to use a unisex bathroom, a private bathroom. A lot of the high schools, I know these kids will have access to the faculty bathroom or something like that. And I don't think that's unreasonable, and it should be exactly what the, I guess, solution to that dilemma is.
Okay, so I'm going to dive down into it just a little bit more. What are your thoughts on children being allowed to transition before they are no longer a child? either to stop hormones or to actually go full transitions?
I think any doctor that does a procedure like that on a person who's not 18 years old should be uh, liable. If that person later in life wishes that they had not done that, made that decision, they should be able to sue the doctor for malpractice, because there's a thing called informed consent, and the idea of that is that, number one, you know what you're doing, and number two, you're of age to consent. So any child that undergoes that, even if the parents are for it, the parents need to be uh, examined in that situation. But if the parents are in favor of that, and the child goes through that, they should be able to come back later and sue the doctor for the damage that they did, because they do cause damage.
Okay, so one of I've had what would be the proper term? A leftist friend of mine say, "Well, Jon, you're a conservative. Can you?" He goes, as a conservative, he goes, "Jon, you believe in parental rights trump the state. What are your thoughts there?" So parents saying, "I think my child should be transitioned or they should receive puberty blockers." What are your thoughts on that?
Again, it's child abuse, and honestly, it's an identity issue, and I get it. People have identity issues. We don't start chopping parts off of human beings because they have an identity issue, or giving them chemical treatments that change their whole future. And if someone does that, they should be legally liable from that point forward, if that person decides that what they've done is a mistake.
All right, let me give out the call-in lines in case we do have some phone calls. We've had some in the past, and we may have some again. This audience has a tendency to just watch as opposed to interact. But the phone number is 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. We have Phil Lyman joining me right now, running for the governor for Utah. This coming Saturday, for state representatives, is the Republican convention, and people at the convention have the opportunity to vote for Phil Lyman or choose another candidate of choice. So if you've got a question that you want to ask Phil, free to call in. Phone number, like I said, is 385-899-2134. Okay, let's get to the next question. We're on question 8. We're doing fairly well. Should government... Now, this is similar to a question that I've already asked, but this is a little bit more broad in scope. Can you think of any reason why the government should shut down the private sector?
I mean, if we're thinking hypothetically, I can't think of a reason why they should shut down the private sector. I'm thinking of like the bomb raids of World War II, when they told people to turn off their lights at night and things like that. That probably made a little bit of sense then. But to shut down the private sector, again, if they have the power to do that, then they're going to find reasons to do it. So we say no. If I don't have the ability to tell you to shut your business, then I don't have the ability to have the government tell you to shut your business. So I can't think of a scenario where that would be appropriate.
The only scenario that I can come up with is, say, like you got a business who is dumping crude oil into the sewer or out in the streets into some, short of that, can you think of, hey, the government doesn't, basically, I'm going to say picking winners and losers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, using that example, the health department, if there's somebody that's you got a restaurant that is, got severely contaminated food, and they're antisocial, they're like deliberately hurting people, that becomes kind of a criminal act and a deliberate act, and they should be shut down. If there's somebody, I guess, that's doing that completely oblivious to what they're doing. So yeah, when you kind of put it in that context with public health and things like that. We do have, I guess, times when you would go in and shut down a business, but the ones that come to mind is if they're really engaging in criminal type activity.
Okay, so short of something along those lines where they're going to be held criminally liable, the answer is no.
No, that's right.
Okay, all right. We're going to go to last few election cycles. Back in 2024, or excuse me, not 20, back in 2024, back in 2016, 8 years ago, when Donald Trump originally ran for president in the Republican primary. If I remember correctly, it was Donald Trump, it was Ted Cruz, and I believe Mark Rubio was still in it. And I want to say one of the Bushes was in as well. Do you remember who you voted for in the primaries?
I was Donald Trump all the way, to the chagrin of a lot of my friends and community members. I remember I went to the caucus night and they elected me to be a state delegate. And they said, "Who are you voting for?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's Jason Chaffetz," and named off a few of the people that we'd be voting for. And they said, "No, for president." I said, "Well, we don't elect the president at convention." They said, "Well, we want to know." And I said, "Donald Trump." And it was like the oxygen left the room because people were, it's like, well, Donald Trump. But I perceived then, I thought, this guy has enough fight and enough kind of like vinegar to take on the other side. So yeah, I've been a Trump fan for a long time. I like that he is a tough fighter.
I'm going to guess in 2020 that would remain the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I wasn't afraid that it would be unfair to you, I was about to say, let me guess you voted for Joe Biden, but I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah.
But that's a moment they could clip out and use unfairly. Heaven knows they've done that on talk from actually from a couple of my shows.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. All right. So let's go into were you District 4 for Congress or District 3?
Third congressional district.
Yeah. Your third congressional district. All right. So I don't really remember who ran the last in for 20. Actually, I do. For 2020, I don't recall. But let's do this. Here's one that is pretty easy, but it gives us a good understanding. When Mitt Romney won his seat in the primary, there was another candidate of choice. It was Mike Kennedy. I can't remember if there was anybody else, but do you remember who you voted for at that primary with Mitt Romney and Mike Kennedy?
Mike Kennedy was the one that I was voting for at that point. Yeah.
Last one in 2020, when there was for the governor's race, the Republican primary, there were 4 candidates. There was Wright, there was Cox, there was Huntsman, and there was Hughes. Do you remember of the 4 who you voted for?
I voted for Greg Hughes.
Okay. All right. So on to 10th question. Do you believe it is fair for Trump supporters to question January 6th, meaning that it was just Trump supporters that caused all the issues and were insurrectionists?
I mean, January 6th was a staged operation. We know now how many agents provocateur there were there. I was so close to going back to Washington D.C. and I have regretted many times that I wasn't there, just because it was historic and those people that went back to look for a redress of grievances, they were in the right place. Coming to the right people for that, but it turned into something really, really, out of control. And I think it was done intentionally, not by the Trump supporters, but by the various federal agents that were there provoking that whole thing. And that's my observation, watching the videos and seeing what I've seen since then.
I want to push back because I know that some of my more moderate Republican friends would say, well, what do you mean by videos?
All the Tucker Carlson videos that came out, after the fact. We saw the videos that showed, punching and slugging and tear gas and all that kind of stuff. What we didn't see was the behind the scenes with the fist bumps, from people who'd been arrested out front, swinging, who were swinging, hitting cops. They go back in the back to get their handcuffs clipped off. They give a fist bump and they go back out to do it again. It's like, it felt, when you see that, it's like, I don't know what, I told somebody the other day, the only thing we know for sure is that we're being lied to. And beyond that, I wish we could trust what we see on the media. Yeah, January 6th was a shame the way it was handled on the part of the left.
Absolutely, I concur. That's my opinion.
Those people should not be sitting in jail. I guess I'll say that the people who are sitting in jail right now, that was not a criminal activity. That may have been a vocal and an active activity, but I haven't seen anybody that is worthy of sitting in jail for 2 years.
Are there
from what I observed?
So let's say that the government. So we have, even very recently, there have been, I can't remember if it's people from Utah recently, but I want to say in the last month that there have been citizens of the United States that have been arrested for January 6th and taken back. What would you do if it came to your attention that either one of the citizens of Utah had been arrested by the federal government, or that they were going to effect a warrant? They were going to, go out and try to take someone into custody from January 6th. How would you handle that?
Well, if I were the governor, I would tell those agencies to back off and to, bring a grand jury and, show something that they could actually hang their hat on. The record that they've got doesn't hold water. They're just, it's vindictive. It's politically motivated. There's no question. And I think a governor in the state has every right to tell the feds to knock it off when it comes to that kind of activity in their state. Whether they would do it or not, I don't know. If they push forward, I'm not saying that the state would bear the cost of their legal defense or anything like that, but the message should be from a state to the federal government is, go do that someplace else. Stay out of Utah.
Okay. Thoughts on national debt?
Also a manufactured crisis. There's nothing about the United States that would justify being $35 trillion in debt. The fact that we are, is it because we don't have natural resources? Is it because we don't have innovation? We don't know how to do things. It's like the opposite of all those things is true. So the fact that we've got $35 trillion in debt tells me that it's designed to weaken the country.
So what can a governor for the state of Utah do to affect that in any way, shape, or form? I've given a lot of thought to this.
So I'll go out kind of on the fringes here. I'm a big fan of blockchain. I think blockchain is a really cool technology. I love that it takes power and keys, basically authority, and it disperses those out. Disintermediation. It flattens the power curve. And I look at that, how it applies to not just to currency, which we've seen blockchain involved with currency, but they could do so much with government in general. It could basically take the operations of government, say the Utah State Tax Commission, anything where the public is interfacing with the government. You could totally flatten that curve by using blockchain. When the Federal Reserve starts to crumble, I think you're going to see really innovative people say, you know what, we've got an alternative to the U.S. dollar, and we are doing very well in our exchange. In Utah, you got a company that the Goldback, I think is what they call themselves. Anyway, so you got these Goldbacks, these little dollar bills, and they've got some now that are tied to a blockchain technology. And I just think as the Federal Reserve starts to crumble, as the dollar starts to crumble, I think you're going to see innovative people come out with a really robust alternative to doing commerce. And I suspect, I hope Utah leads the way on that. I hope that Utah is one of the states that says, as the federal government, goes down the toilet, Utah somehow emerges with their own kind of economy.
So they've already floated out the idea of a CBDC, central bank digital currency. I think they've already got their own solution that they're working on right along those lines.
Yeah, you never miss it. Never miss an opportunity there.
You create your own crisis and you come in and fix it.
Yeah, so they see digital currency taking off. It's like, hey, what if the central bank took over that function? And who controls the ledger? Well, don't pay no attention to that. We think digital currency is great, so let us control the ledger, and that that would be like the worst of all scenarios, is to have a central bank digital currency. That came up in our committee meeting. It wasn't in 24. I think it was in 2023. And someone brought that Utah wants to create a new blockchain registration. So hey, if you've got blockchain company, you could register that in Utah. Then Utah could oversee and control it and make sure there's no fraud and all these things. And I said, that's it reminded me of that Rage Against the Machine lead singer that told Paul Ryan and say, please stop using our song. You are the machine against which we are raging. And that's digital currency was not designed to be controlled by a government. It was not designed to be like locked down and taken over by some central administration. Now it's a beautiful thing, because in blockchain you can have a government, you can have an administration there that does a really important function. The difference is that the keys are broken up between various groups, and so you disperse that. You disintermediate the power structure. I'm kind of talking in a circle here, but yeah.
Okay, let's go on to question number 12: abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on abortion?
I kind of alluded to that earlier, that we get these topics that when we talk about it, are we talking about the politics of abortion, or are we talking about the act of taking the life of an unborn child? And that's exactly what we're doing. I believe firmly that that life begins at conception, that is an entity that deserves consideration. And so when we talk about protecting the rights of honest people, an unborn fetus is an honest person who deserves some protection. I might vary a little bit from some people, in that I look at the justification possibly for taking a life. There's lots of places in the law where we justify that, self-defense, things like that. And so then it comes down to, okay, well, what's the punishment for a person that does that? If there's a 15-year-old girl who's the victim of rape or incest and she chooses to have an abortion, I would have a hard time judging her very harshly for that, or trying to create laws that would punish her very harshly for that. But still, you have a law in the books. Doctors who perform those would understand that they're doing it in violation of the law, and then you I guess let the system play out from there. But I'm not in favor of really harsh judgment or criminal penalties for abortion, but certainly I'm not in favor of like legalizing the taking of a life, and that should be understood.
Okay. So without having a penalty, unfortunately, sometimes people do things. There are people that are willing to perform abortions and do abortions and have abortions. There's doctors willing to do it, and if they don't believe there's a penalty, what's to stop them from doing it?
That's a good question. To say that I would not have a harsh penalty doesn't mean that I wouldn't have a penalty.
Okay.
And someone who's breaking the law, if I wouldn't even necessarily classify it in terms of misdemeanor or felony, even in that situation. But yeah, a doctor who's basically willfully violating the law, performing abortions when our laws clearly say we don't do that, would be, their license would be in jeopardy for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Education. Your thoughts on education?
Education. The education system. I guess I'll talk about that. What I see as a detriment to the underlying objective of education is this almost militarized system that we have of school boards and the state school board, and the requirement for them to march in line and to stay unified in a central message. It's to the detriment of parents who try to stand up and say, we don't want this material in our school. The parents are viewed as disruptors, agitators, domestic terrorists, whatever. And that there's no room for that. And I see that as the extension of a administration that's gotten too full of itself. The solution in my mind, honestly, what I would love to see happen would be for the local school parent councils to have the authority. I don't know that we need local school boards or even school districts. I think you've got all of these schools, they all have a parental council. I'd love to see those parental councils elected by their peers, run their schools, receive the allocation of funds and resources from the state school board, which all of those are assigned to a specific state school board member. And now, instead of people taking their kids out of public schools, they would feel like they are part of the public school system and that they have the ability to affect it. I think it would make for, again, disintermediation. You'd see that power structure flow out instead of to 42 school districts. You'd see it flow to, the several thousand individual schools, and they would have a lot more authority to make those decisions at that much flatter power structure rate, and the state school board would become just a means to allocating resources.
All right, let me throw in, how does the federal government gives, I want to say, is it 9% of the budget to the state of 9% of the state of Utah's school budget is from the federal government. At least at one point it was. I've heard other people say it's closer to 20%. What are your thoughts with the federal government having its hands in the state of Utah and making its decisions?
I should know the numbers on that because I've been crunching a lot of numbers here recently, but roughly 29% of the state's budget is federal, and I'm assuming that the school budget would be approaching that same amount. I'm not sure what percentage of the school's budget is federal.
It's okay to correct me if I'm wrong, Phil. It's okay.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. You're probably exactly right. To the extent that federal government feels that they can dictate curriculum because of the money that they send, which, by the way, isn't their money, it's our money. So the fact that they think they can dictate under those circumstances at all is a little bit upside down. But if it meant getting rid of CRT or SEL in our schools and giving up federal funding, I would give up the federal funding in a heartbeat and make sure that our schools are not teaching things that are detrimental to the kids.
All right, my lonely call screener asked me to give out the phone numbers. So Dwayne, folks, feel free to reach to give us a call at 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134 is the call-in lines. All right, so roughly, actually, we're on question 14, Big Tech Section 230. What are your thoughts on Big Tech and Section 230? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, the 230, I think, is the section that gave them some immunity from being sued and because they're part of the public square or something to that effect. I'm a big fan of the free market. I don't believe that legislators should be meddling in the affairs of these social media companies to a large extent. And by the same token, I think the social media companies should be 100% liable for the malicious activity that they choose to engage in. If it's addictive behavior and they're knowingly peddling that to kids, they should be fully liable for being sued for doing that. So the exemptions under 230 are those. I have no idea how that even evolved. I haven't really looked into that, but there should be no exemption for those companies.
Okay, over roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of 66% of the state of Utah is owned by the federal government. What are your thoughts about that?
It's an interesting thing. When Utah became a state in 1896, that boundary that defines the state of Utah meant something. And what did it mean? Prior to that, we didn't elect our own governor. The governor was appointed. The federal government provided law enforcement, the federal rangers. And when we became a state, it meant that we had jurisdiction over the land within the state of Utah. The federal government since then, and special interest groups and nefarious interests have convinced us that, well, because we don't own the land, we have no say in Utah over what happens on that land. There was a study done in, I think it was the 1956 Eisenhower report, and it laid out the various categories of federal jurisdiction. They have 100% jurisdiction in a state over post offices, Hill Air Force Base, forts, arsenals, dockyards, other needful buildings. But they don't have jurisdiction over the forests and all the other federal land, even though they own it. Who does have jurisdiction? By code, it's the state of Utah. So the fact that we don't exercise jurisdiction, I think, is on us. We should push back. We should exercise jurisdiction. When the federal government comes and says, you have to shut down your coal-fired power plants, or you have to stop mining on federal land, or we're going to designate a national monument on federal land, the state should simply say, sorry, it's not your jurisdiction. That's our jurisdiction, and we will assert our jurisdiction there. The current governor likes to say that we're fighting the federal government. We got 60 lawsuits filed against the federal government. Well, it should be the other way around. We should be doing what a state does, which is producing, authorizing use of the land. And if the federal government wants to take issue with that, they should be suing the state of Utah rather than the other way around. And
instead of saying mother, so what would you say a fair statement or a synopsis of what I'm hearing you say is, instead of saying "Mother, may I," we want Mother to come and try to slap our hands.
Yeah. If they think that we are out of line, let them come and tell us that we're out of line. Now, on the flip side of this, there is an obligation to dispose. The federal government has an obligation to dispose of the land, and that's not a state. The state doesn't control that. We can demand it. We can force it. That's something we could sue over. Is, hey, you were supposed to dispose of. You haven't disposed. But someone asked me that early on. I said, what the federal government do? And I said, I don't know. That's above my pay grade. All I know is that they have an obligation to dispose of the land. And the timing isn't really specified. So in the meantime, while the federal government owns the land, and I kind of like public land. I kind of like living in a state where you have access to the land. I grew up in San Juan County. It's 8% private property. Everything else is owned by government at some level, and I don't really relish the idea of living in a state like Texas, where everywhere you go, you have to get permission from landowners. But the problem now is that the federal government is charging people with trespass for just walking out their front door and going on federal land, and that's untenable. And it should never ever happen in a state that you're trespassed because you dared to go on somebody's on some cryptobiotic soil or something, and that's exactly what we're seeing happen. People are being criminally charged and denigrated and run through federal court for doing absolutely nothing criminal other than
because they go for an ATV ride.
Yeah, even that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna I don't know if pushback is an improper term or not, but here's a concern that I have with the federal government having it all. So, I mean, I'm not a very smart guy. I probably have an IQ of about 12. So my understanding of when I read the Constitution is there are only certain things like military bases, as you said, postal buildings, postal roads, and just a few things that the federal government has the right to own. And on top of that, whenever a state comes into the union, they come in on equal grounds to other states. Well, as soon as we go basically past Colorado, the vast majority of states have less than 10%. There's some states that it's like 3 or 4% are owned by the federal government. My question is, why in the heck hasn't someone said, okay, sorry, federal government, see the Constitution, see where it says coming in on equal grounds, and these are the things that you can own. Okay, I'm fine even with the dead weight proving grounds. I'm even fine with the large area that we have out in the West Desert where pilots get to go play and shoot their missiles. I'm fine with that. Everything else, I go, I'm sorry, it's the state of Utah, and it's time we get it back.
Right.
Am I completely up in the night?
No. And again, what do we want the federal government to do in that situation? Do we want them to transfer ownership to the state? Because frankly, the state doesn't have a very good track record either of respecting personal property rights or respecting individual rights to use the land and things like that. So as soon as you get a government, you give them authority and power to regulate the land, they immediately start to,
Okay, I will agree. It's a problem. But I am going to say this.
yeah.
My understanding is that's still a problem that should be decided by people within the state of Utah, not the federal government.
I don't disagree with you on that. But what I've said is, again, it's a federal problem. They have to do something, and in my mind, they have to dispose of the land. In all the other states, they basically sold it. They or homesteaded it. They just let it go. And then when they got out west, they decided, maybe we'll just hang on to this, and we'll dispose of it at some point down the road. And that's so from a legal standpoint, I don't know that we have the ability to say, no, you have to do it and you have to do it now. But the jurisdiction question, to me, answers so much of that. And if the state would exercise their jurisdiction, maybe they take the wind out of the sails of the environmental groups and those that are saying we this is federal land. It's like, yeah, so what? We still are going to control it. We're still going to mine it. We're still going to recreate on it, do all of those things. Hopefully that would I don't know, maybe take away some of the incentive for the federal government to retain ownership. There really should be no serious benefits for the idea that they own that land.
My thought is none of the states have said it's time for us to get that land, and I think that's one of the things that has not happened.
Yeah, Utah probably came the closest back in 2012, and Gary Herbert signed the bill for the Transfer of Public Lands Act, and that was huge. If the federal government came out next week and said, okay, we're done, we're going to transfer all this land to the state, I would be the first one in line to say, let's get it done. Let's do that. But the second issue then would be, okay, now how is the state going to manage this in a better way and more responsibly than the federal government does? And there's something, I have to admit, that there's something that appeals to me a little bit about having, again, that division of state has jurisdiction, federal government has ownership. Who benefits in that? Hopefully it's the people. They've got the access. You take the ownership and the jurisdiction, put it all in the hands of the state, and now you're going to want to make sure you've got some really stringent rules in there that the state can't turn it into a tyrant themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Well thought out. Is it fair for, and this is back to a Trump thing, is it fair for Trump supporters to ask if Trump won the election or not? Absolutely
fair. We know that the systems are weak. We know that the universal mail-in ballots in Utah it's an extremely weak system. There's no audit that's done. There's no verification. When you do ask a question, you get nothing but vitriolic pushback in Utah from the lieutenant governor's office, from the elections office. So I don't know what other conclusion you can draw, or maybe not. Maybe conclusion isn't the right word, but it's absolutely fair to say, was this even a fair election? It's the right question. Nobody can give you the right answer other than to say, well, that's ridiculous, and you're spreading, distrust, or you're a sore loser, whatever. Still,
well, there's a certain lieutenant governor that spent millions of dollars on a campaign ad or on a public campaign saying it was the most fair and accurate elections ever.
Well, I mean, Governor Cox made that announcement. I think he was the first one out of the gates to say that, these elections were fair and President Biden won and congratulations. It's like, well, wait a second, we're not even done counting yet, and you've already declared that. and then he's just like doubled down every time he turns around. I'm a CPA. I look at systems, and if there's a weak system, you say, well, how can we make this system stronger? And if the only response you get is saying you're spreading distrust, nothing could be further from the truth. If you want to trust an election system, make a system that is trustworthy. And right now we don't have that. We truly do not have a trustworthy election system.
Let's see. Question 17, immigration. What are your thoughts on immigration?
Well, I guess we'll start with illegal immigration first. Utah has policies that make it a magnet for illegal immigration, and even worse than that, make it a magnet for illegal immigration non-citizens who have criminal intent, because we have established that we are not going to violate federal law by detaining non-citizens longer than 72 hours. So you get situations where four non-citizen illegal aliens rape a 11-year-old girl, they film it, and they get 48 months probation. They're not in jail. Why are they not in jail? I can only assume that they're not in jail because ICE standards say you can't keep them longer than
I'm
72
pretty
hours.
sure if I was to do that exact same offense, I wouldn't be under probation. I guarantee you I'd be thrown in jail, and I might be dead in jail.
No, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what we're doing here. And if you listen to the governor's rhetoric on this, and those around the governor, they're saying, well, we can't violate federal law. We don't have the authority to do this. And I said, why not? Why would we not be able to violate federal law? Lots of states do it for marijuana. They say, well, we're going to be a sanctuary state for marijuana. We're going to be a sanctuary state for this. Why couldn't we be a sanctuary state that's in favor of the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens instead of only to their detriment? And it's a woke leftist. The whole immigration debacle that we have now is, again, it's a manufactured crisis. The southern borders are open. It's intended to overwhelm states like Utah, especially states of goodwill where there are a lot of good people, and so they're going to do it. They're going to overwhelm a good state like Utah, and we have the ability to change that tomorrow simply by saying we're going to detain people who are here illegally, especially starting with those who are arrested for criminal activity. If our jails are good enough for our citizens, they're good enough for our non-citizens.
I guarantee you Mexico is not worried about what the jail's like. I've heard some pretty bad stories about some of the non-American jails on the American continent.
And you've got Americans that sit down there for month after month after month waiting for a senator or some rescue line to help them get out of a Mexican jail. Yet you can come up to America and the word is out. If you want to commit crimes, if you want to deal fentanyl, or if you got human trafficking interests, Utah is a pretty sweet place to come for non-citizens. Like you say, you and I couldn't get away with it because we don't have ICE there to protect us, or the special interest groups there to sue any of the judges that dare to defy their order to release them after 72 hours. It's really a sick perversion of justice under the law.
Yeah. Second Amendment. What are your thoughts on the Second Amendment as governor?
I like the Second Amendment. The rights to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and Utah, I love that we're a constitutional carry state, and we should be a sanctuary state for the Second Amendment. We should make that very clear to the federal government. Whatever rules they pass at the federal level to restrict gun ownership is going to be challenged by the state of Utah.
Red flag laws.
Red flag laws are nothing but gun control, and they should be rejected on the front end.
How often? Let's see. Economy. What are your thoughts on the economy?
Utah has a great economy because we have such a good culture of people, a lot of incentive. I think people in Utah look around and they see if they apply themselves, they could have a successful business. We have lots of really good business startups, lots of really qualified people, good work ethic, honest people. the fact that we are out recruiting, multi-billion-dollar companies to relocate to Utah, I think is a disservice to the citizens who already call Utah home. It's a game that's being played by people who probably haven't been all that successful in their own businesses, or they want the cachet of rubbing shoulders with these big companies that they only get through government. I'd much rather see a state full of small entrepreneurial businesses than a state with some really large dominant businesses myself.
Let's have a little ecosystem of small businesses wind up growing into big businesses. I mean, it's not like we haven't had a few success stories here in Utah. Ryan Smith, right?
Right.
Jury nullification.
Beautiful thing. Yeah. Juries have the right to nullify. When a federal judge comes out and says, under the circumstances, you must convict, it's a great thing for a jury to say, not so fast, Judge. We'll take into account the facts and circumstances of the case, and if we believe that a person is justified, they can nullify a federal requirement to find somebody guilty, and they should do that much more often.
Legislative nullification.
Are you talking about federal legislation that the state would nullify?
I will get to that. I'm talking about legislative nullification. The legislature nullifying, whether it be federal or some other, but yes, much more along the lines of the federal government and the legislature meeting it.
So we passed in 2021. I passed HB 451, which was said that any executive order that is deemed to be unconstitutional, basically the legislature would nullify that, and it was unlawful for state agencies to implement it. And then this last year we passed another bill that said that the State Sovereignty Act, which kind of did the same thing. And I guess that's kind of along the lines of my phone's dying, so I got to get plugged in here. But
are you on your phone right now?
Yeah.
So go ahead and plug that puppy in. We definitely don't want it to die. All right.
We are plugged in. So
excellent.
So that's legislators have to push back.
State nullification.
I'm assuming again that's the state nullifying
federal nullifying federal government.
If a state is unwilling to push back against federal mandates, is it even a state, or has it become accepted the role of being a administrative subunit of the federal government? And immigration is a great example of that. I love what Texas is doing, Governor Abbott, to push back and just tell the Biden administration, we're not going to do it. We're not going to tear down those barbed wire barriers. We're not going to remove those. And the Biden administration suing them, and the Supreme Court upholding Texas, under the provisions of invasion under Article 4. And I've said before, whether it's an invasion of your southern border or an invasion of your second grade classrooms, states have not only a right but a duty to stand up against that. So yeah, absolutely, states that can't nullify nonsensical federal arbitrary and capricious rules are not. I would say they're not states. They have become just an administrative subunit of the federal government.
I think this plays in a couple areas. One is immigration. One of my thoughts is, hey, federal government, if you're bringing in these illegal aliens, bottom line is we'll arrest the bus driver. If you bring him on a plane, we're gonna impound the bus. If you want to fly in on a jet aircraft, we're gonna hold the flight crew. We're gonna arrest them. We're gonna hold the flight crew, and we're gonna hold the plane, and we're gonna impound that. How would it be nice to be the governor flying around in Governor 1 in a nice Boeing 767 or a 757 or something like that, right? Thank you, federal government. We got that for free. Okay.
So on that point, we just got a new BLM rule that came out that said that there's a mitigation fee that could be charged by the BLM. So saying, well, ranchers might have to pay a mitigation fee for what? Well, maybe because their cattle are doing something. Where does that mitigation fee end up going? It goes to the BLM and it goes back to the leaseholders, which potentially could be the environmental groups. So you've got the BLM that would be essentially collecting fees. We don't know how much, a lot, from ranchers that would go straight to groups like the Wilderness Society or the Nature Conservancy. And that's a situation. It's like, well, this was never intended to be. And just like you're saying, as a governor, I would say, we'll if you try to implement this in Utah, we'll arrest the state BLM director. We'll arrest any of the state BLM or the federal BLM employees that try to implement this. I think it's a beautiful thing for a state just to say, we're just not doing that in Utah.
We have precedents in the state. The EPA was going to come out and I think it was going to shut down a business because they were kicking up too much whatever in the air. And Norm Bangeter back in the day said, you step off that plane, we're going to arrest you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got two more questions that if we have time, I want to dive down a little bit more into the state sovereignty / state nullification thought process along the lines of the EPA. DCFS, any thoughts there?
I do not have a high opinion of DCFS. I've seen too often that they break up families. They don't respect parents. I'm sure they feel that they're providing a valuable role, but they have too little regard for families and too much bureaucracy in there to keep them from becoming a tool in the hands of people that really dislike families.
Well, I'm going to say this. Too many of those workers at DCFS don't have children themselves and aren't even married.
Right.
I'm like, I'm sorry. Wrong people to be doing that type of stuff.
Wrong people to be doing that. And I don't know how many strikes you get before you're out, but DCFS says they have a really bad track record. And I'm not saying that there aren't some parents who have a really bad track record, and maybe DCFS is the entity to step in and intervene. But to me, they've lost their right to do that. They've lost the moral high ground, and I have low regard for that agency.
Parker Jensen, the name Parker Jensen, I want to say it was many years ago. Election integrity. Your thoughts on election integrity? Do we have?
No, our system is weak, and you can't audit it. So in that regard, it doesn't have election integrity. As a CPA, if I, we provide assurance services when we do an audit, and basically we say, we've looked at everything based on our review. The results are fairly stated. If I looked at the election system right now, I could not come to an opinion as to whether or not the results are fairly stated. It doesn't mean that I would say that it's stolen. It wouldn't mean that I would say this system there's no way to verify. And for me as an independent, qualified, third-party professional to say, I believe that what is happening is correct because the controls aren't there and you can't look at it. So it'd be easy to do a statistical review of elections before they're certified. But you can't do that. The lieutenant governor won't allow anyone to look at those voter rolls, and they should. An auditor should have access to all the records that they need to perform an evaluation. So.
Deidre Henderson, you were awesome as a state senator up until your last year. What happened to you? That's all I've got to ask. All right, let me give out the phone numbers real quick again. We've got Phil for about another 12 minutes. He said you can be on until 5:30.
Yeah, I need to take off pretty close to 5:30.
Okay, so 5:30. I'm going to let you go at 5:30. So anyone wants to call in, I'll let you do your calls. I do have a few final questions, wrap up with Phil Lyman. But, folks, if you want to call in, it's 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Okay, so I do want to dive a little bit back on. Here's something that I'd love to see a governor do. EPA. I'd love to see him go to the energy sector and say, okay, we've got plenty of oil here, we've got plenty of natural gas here, we've got plenty of coal. It's time for us to go get, all these coal deposits that were locked up by the federal government. We're taking effect on those. I'd love to see that. Then, secondly, and here is your website. Better Roads Ahead, the Lyman for Governor. So one of the things that I would definitely like to ask you to do is, what can we do? We've got refineries. One of the things that I've heard is refineries are shutting down across America. Why can't we say, hey, let's go ahead and open a refinery out in Vernal? Let's see what we can do to get some of that state resources being well used. Oh, and EPA, if you come to shut us down in any way, shape, or form, along and on top of that, like our meat packing plants, you come in, we're going to arrest you on the spot. Phil, am I crazy? Is that a proper role for a governor to even consider? And I hope I won't be arrested because I spoke out of turn.
It is it's absolutely the proper role for a governor to take. In fact, if the governor won't take that position, then you can very well be assured that no one in the state is going to take that position, because they know when push comes to shove, they'll get right up to the point of going to court or going to fight on that. And if the governor's not behind them, they're on their own and they're going to lose. So yeah. Again, if a governor has the right leadership and is willing to step into that space, it emboldens the whole state to be better producers. You bring up like the meat processing. There's a new meat processing plant open in Richfield just a couple of weeks ago, and I went down to the grand opening, and what a great thing, when most of the meat processing plants are being bought up by large conglomerates owned by China. You've got this little homegrown meat processing plant opening up there in Richfield, which is really exciting to me. I think the last time a gas refinery was opened in the United States was in the 1970s. We don't build them anymore because you can't get permitting. Utah, we've got uranium. I love nuclear energy. I made the proposal to a group of legislators that we become a sanctuary state for nuclear energy development. Because we had a plant or a facility that wanted to create thorium, small modular thorium reactors. They needed a testing facility. It would cost $12,000 with the Idaho National Labs to build the facility. 20 years and $80 million to permit it.
Whoa! Okay, so did you say $12 million to build it?
$12,000 in materials to build it.
$12,000 in materials
to build the testing unit that they needed.
Right, but it would take 20 years in permitting, and how many millions?
$80 million in 20 years for the
permitting process.
To get the permit to build this facility that they could build for $12,000. So I said, well, why don't we be a sanctuary state and just do it in Utah? Say we're not doing interstate commerce, we'll just do it here. Come to find out that Texas was ahead of us on that, and they were already saying we're going to do this in Texas. So Utah should, 100%. We've got our little San Rafael Research Center down there in Orangeville, Utah. we should be testing thorium reactive methods, and that really was that's what it was designed for. I was very instrumental in getting that put together, that facility, and we should be developing nuclear energy and coal and gas, and they are doing a lot with coal. They're doing a lot with hydrogen, but nuclear and especially thorium has an amazing potential, really big future.
If I understand, it's not as volatile. There's not quite the same worries and concerns about it. Is that correct?
It was on a parallel path back when nuclear was being developed, but what they found is that you couldn't make a bomb out of thorium. You could make a bomb out of refined uranium, so they went that direction for good reason, national security, and but yeah, thorium cannot be turned into nuclear weapons like uranium can. But we've got enough thorium. It's one of the most plentiful resources on the planet. There's enough thorium in Utah to power the United States for what Dr. Memmon at BYU said, for 10,000 years. So
Whoa.
yeah, we could do it. And the byproduct of spent thorium are isotopes, medical isotopes that are literally miracle drug treatments. And the only way you can get these isotopes is from spent thorium. So I said, well, what if we instead of
This
doing
sounds
nuclear,
beautiful, Phil. There's a part of me
so
that does not believe you, because this is too good to be true.
and obviously I'm not a thorium chemical engineer, but these are the things we get. So I said, well, what if we, instead of creating a nuclear power plant, let's create a medical isotopes plant, and the byproduct of which is unlimited free, clean power. And honestly, that is the business model. That it's a reality. We could totally have free, abundant, clean, carbon-free energy. Any environmentalist that opposes nuclear energy is not really an environmentalist.
So I'm sorry, my power bill is somewhere in the neighborhood of on average about $300 a month. I would love to see that go down to $60 a month, because we have abundant energy.
It's so doable. It's so doable. And I mean, there's a lot of people that would be displaced. That'd be very disruptive, to an energy sector. But at some point, we're going to see that reality, whether it's in our lifetime or in our kids' lifetime. But yeah, it's definitely out there.
Okay, so last question before I give you the opportunity to share anything you'd like to. This is a real important question. This is a real hard one. Would you be willing to come back to KMMU and talk with Jon quarterly should you be elected governor?
I would love to do that. Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. Yeah.
And just so you know, I'm not going to put you through these 23 questions. I will ask you some hard ones if my audience is like, hey, I don't like what Phil's doing. I will ask you the tough questions, but on top of that, I want you to talk to the, please feel free to come and say in reverse, hey folks, this is what I need your help with in supporting. I need you to talk to your legislators. I need to talk to you, to talk to these different groups. I need you to talk to the AG. I need you to talk to the auditor, whatever the case may be. Hey, I need you to help me get these policies into effect.
Yeah, it's a great platform. And what's the adage? Dance with the one what brung you. And I, my base are the rural ranchers, the patriots, the people in Utah who believe that individuals make better decisions for themselves than the government does. And you definitely fit that space.
Well, we've got I see a lot of signs even in Salt Lake County for Phil Lyman. So
Salt Lake County is it's a good place. There are a lot of very conservative people in Salt Lake County.
But let's get rid of some of the woke people in Salt Lake City. All right. Thank you for coming on. Phil, we've got a couple minutes left. First of all, please tell people where they can go to find out more about you, some of the policies that you want to implement, some of the things in your campaign that you're trying to affect, and where they can go to donate to your campaign should they want to do that.
So Lyman for Utah, it's LYMANFOR Utah.com. And I'll tell you, I appreciate donations. What I really appreciate is people that will follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, and will like and share those things. This really is a movement, and what is needed is definitely kind of an awakening in Utah. So sharing things with your family, with your neighbors, watching what we're doing on social media, really helps us move the needle. Social media is an incredible tool if people will really engage with it. So we want people to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram.
Well, we just happen to be broadcasting live on X right now on Twitter. So, Phil, I'm going to ask if you would text me because I think I have it, but I want to make sure. If you would text me your Twitter handle. I'm not on Instagram, because if I got an Instagram, I would never get anything done in my entire life. So I want to say thank you for joining me, folks. Let me put it this way. There are only two candidates for governor that anyone should even think about possibly considering. And Phil Lyman is definitely one of those two. So please take a look at Phil Lyman. And let's say that you're not a delegate. I know that not everybody that pays attention to our show is a delegate. Reach out to your Republican delegate and say, listen, I need you to take a look at Phil Lyman. I need you to consider him for governor. Phil, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. I will be at the convention. I'm looking forward to giving away my day. And I want to say thank you to you and to your family for you giving away many days and many nights. And hopefully you get to spend a little bit of time at home before you're in the governor's mansion, right?
Thank you, John. And yeah, I appreciate everything you do, and keep up the good work.
All right, folks, that's lymanforutah.com, Lyman, spelled out FOR, Utah.com. We will see you Saturday. Phil, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I'm going to let Phil go, but I am going to continue on. I am going to share with you, and Phil, God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Folks, I'm going to go down some of the races. I do not, there's some races that I don't really have a strong thought on. So what I am going to do is just say, hey, this is the races. I don't have anybody that I am necessarily, what would be the proper term, saying that I think that this is who you need to elect. There's not any one individual, but I will tell you that there are in basically each one of the major races, I would say that there is a couple candidates that are worth consideration, and there are definitely candidates that, in my opinion, are not worth your consideration. So, the current office holder for governor, I do not think is worth your consideration. He has, in the last several months, basically in the last year, started looking like a conservative. Why? Because he knew he was facing an election. Folks, 2 years ago at the Republican convention, he didn't show up. He did not show up to the Republican convention along with Mitt Romney. Neither one of them showed up to the state convention. He said, I'm going down to the Texas border. If I remember correctly, it was the Texas border. It could have been the down to New Mexico. And he sent Deidre Henderson on his behalf. Absolutely ridiculous, pathetic, and he knew he would have gotten booed. Bottom line is, a man that can't face if you can't face the Republican Party, you don't deserve for that vote. So the two candidates I think that are worth any consideration at all are Carson Jorgensen and Phil Lyman. To state delegates, you need to do your looking, you need to do your research. I will admit fully that Phil Lyman, I asked him to run for office 2 years ago, roughly, about 2 years ago this time. Bottom line is, I think he is a fantastic choice. Carson Jorgensen definitely would be a good choice as well. State senator, running for state senate. And I don't know, Dwayne, if you want to jump in on these, I'd be happy to have your thought process. But running for state office, as far as, would you disagree with my opinion on governor? That the one of two choices is either Phil Lyman or Carson Jorgensen.
Well, as journalists, we can actually make do that kind of stuff. What's the word?
Endorse. I'm not endorsing anybody.
Well, but I will tell you, we're here to get information out, and that's what we've done. If you want my personal opinion, I'm with Phil. Okay.
Okay.
I know Phil. I know Carson. I like them both. And some of these decisions are tough. John. They're
I'll,
tough.
I'll tell you. Okay, so in my perfect world, as of a year and a half ago, a year ago, what I wanted was I wanted for the presidential race. I wanted I wanted Donald Trump to have another 4 years, and I wanted Ron DeSantis to show all the other governors in the country how to run a free state, and then so Ron DeSantis can only be governor after the election cycle for 2 more years. Then I would say Trump needs to bring him into his cabinet and like Secretary of State, some significant position, and then I want 8 years of Ron DeSantis. That's what I was thinking about a year and a half ago.
And then another 8 years.
I'm not as
Another
strongly there as I used to be.
Another 8 years behind that with Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yes, actually, I concur. Actually, I think Vivek Ramaswamy probably, actually, in my opinion, may be a better candidate for president even than Ron DeSantis. The thing I will give Ron DeSantis is he's proven, he's done a number of things very well. Okay, so
He definitely
along
helped
those
out
lines,
the state of Florida. Florida changed with him. So
yeah, absolutely, completely changed. And so this is my statement. I'd love to see Phil Lyman in for at least 2 terms, and then I'd like to have Carson Jorgensen in.
well,
That
and there's a whole bunch of other important people in this race besides our governor. There's a whole bunch of candidates out there that it actually it's kind of disappointing that there are for U.S. Senate there were 11, there are now 10 people running for that office. So it's makes the decision tough, and then it makes a plurality, and it's hard to get anybody in, because the votes get divided. But
okay, so I'm going to go to the Senate, the race for Senate. There are two that I feel very confident on, but there is one from people that are in the know, and I'm going to tell you that there is another one that is kind of new to this that I have heard from other candidates running for office mentioning, "Hey, John, this person is worth consideration," but I've not been able to get in touch with his campaign. I have not been able to get in touch with him directly. So the two people that I think are worth considering for office, you interviewed one of them, Carolyn Fippen. Then the other one, I'm going to say I've interviewed on K Talk. I would say Trent Staggs. Trent Staggs, I think, is worth people's consideration.
Well, and we've had
Yeah.
interviews on KMMU and other places of all of them, and like I said, it's a hard decision. But then, I work with a bunch of them. Okay, just from the technology standpoint, I'm working with Carolyn Fippen, and so that's where my heart lies. Okay, but how I make a decision is I get to know them personally. Okay, and that's not easy to do for the average person. But I have reasons because I'm a tech guy, and I do what I can to help anybody. So, and there are some great people running for office. The auditor, for instance, and the
Hold on.
treasurer.
I want to get to those. I want to get to those offices in just a minute. So I'm going to ask you to hold on with me. So I want to stay with Senate. So the top two candidates in my mind are Carolyn Fippen and Trent Staggs. So the third horse in this race that I've heard good things from other fellow candidates that I respect. Hey, you ought to take a look at Jason Walton. I have not been able to get Jason Walton on any of my shows. And when I've been a state delegate going out to the meetings, I've never been to a meeting where Jason Walton is at. So, and here's the thing that I really like about, and I really respect with the delegate system is, as a delegate, I get us go. And so I made a commitment to my precinct that I would go to multiple places to hear these candidates, which I've done. I hear them talk to multiple groups. And when you do that, you hear them say something. It is very common for a candidate to go, "I know where I'm at and I know the issues of this area. I will speak to the issues of the area." You go to a completely different area, guess what? They will talk about different things, and sometimes they will contradict themselves. And that's one thing I'm going to give for Carolyn, and I'm going to give for Trent Staggs. I have not heard them really contradict themselves. It's been the same message basically given across time. Jason Walton, though, I've been told, hey, Jon, you ought to take a look at him. Like I said, I haven't been able to see him. I haven't been able to hear from him. Most likely, I probably won't cast my ballot for him. But folks, I think it's worth consideration. All I'm and here on KMMU, I realize that in general, as I told you, I'm not endorsing anybody, but I do think I'm going to lead some people to some over others. I think there's some that you absolutely should not even consider for voting. Okay, so Dwayne,
Well, like I said, there are a lot of people running. We got Josh Randall, we got Trent Staggs, we got Chandler Tanner, we got Jason Walton, Brad Wilson, John Curtis. They're all running for Senate. Okay, and you got to do your own research and find what you like about them and why you like them. And I will say that I'm really enjoying is, Utah's a big state, but a lot of these guys are holding teleconferences. You can go with 20, 30, 50 other people. Phil had last week, he had 1,000 people on his teleconference, and that's a good way to get introduced to them. Okay, it's a good way. So find one.
Also
we're running out of time now. I mean, we'll have a couple of days left. So
yeah. Also, a great thing to do, folks, is you put pressure on these people to say, hey, you need to come to Main Street Media Utah. You need to come with Talk with Jon, and you need to come on our other shows, because I've got 23 questions. Now, there may be some other questions that people would like to ask, but I've compiled that list. It's actually now like 26 questions. I've spent a few years compiling that. That's taken a couple years with a lot of different callers, a lot of different feedback of people saying, these are the questions that I'm interested in.
Well, and you're doing a good job, because you seem to get through those questions in an hour. And that's about what, I mean, when I talked to Carolyn Phippen earlier, she only had a half an hour. These people are running around like crazy. They're all over the state. So.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you, Jon. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great service. Thank you.
That's not what I was asking for, but thank you. That's very kind of you. Let's go to the AG, running for Attorney General. I'm going to tell you that my top two picks right now, the top two people that I think people need to consider the most for Attorney General, is Trent Christensen as well as Frank Mylar. Frank Mylar, I like his litigative experience. Trent Christensen, I like his CEO experience, and that dude is a flamethrower. We had him on last week.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that was almost, when he was talking, we had Michael Letts on. So that was, I didn't think we were going to have Trent on for the first half hour of the show. We got Michael Letts, and Michael and I were talking about some things, and Trent Staggs came on and was flamethrowing. There was a part of me that was like, hey, Trent, I think you're going, I wanted to, if I would have been his, on his campaign team, I would have said, Trent, you're going too hot. Pull back a little.
But that's him. He is just a firebrand. He really is. And if you took, I shouldn't say this because I work with both of those guys. If you took the two of them and put them together, you'd have the perfect candidate. Okay, you'd have the perfect candidate, because it's just, that's a tough decision. So you go listen to them, hear what they have to say.
Let's see. Then let's go to auditor, state auditor. Any thoughts there? The only one that comes to my mind is Carolyn Phippen. Or not Carolyn Phippen, Tina Cannon.
Tina Cannon. Was she on your show? I know she was on one of our shows.
Yes, she was on my show.
I just love her. She is straightforward. She worked for who was the guy? Frugal Dougal, who is also running for office in a different position. But I really like Tina Cannon. There's no one else for me. But like I said, these are our opinions. But one of the things that I do,
and right now, hold on, Dwayne. Right now, let me give out the call in line, because people, if you want to call in, the phone number is 385-899-2134. We're willing to let you bring in your opinion into this. This is not. As soon as a caller comes in, we will give you airtime and we will listen to what you have to say.
Let me fire the call-in studio back up. Hang on a second,
Okay.
because when Phil left, I shut it down. But I'll fire it up. But yeah, our eventual goal, and one of the things we're going to start doing is we're going to start promoting the KMMU big time. We've pretty much ironed out some of the bugs, but technically, so now it's time to get the airplane off the runway. So, but yeah, we want you to call in. Call, give us a call.
All right. Can
It's
you
not the
think
Dwayne and John show. It's KMMU, and we want to make it your
Whoa,
show.
whoa, Dwayne, shut your mouth. It says right there on the screen, talk with John. and the key phrase there is talk with. It could be some other idiot. You know, I'm just some idiot that happens to be here on this. I don't know why they said, hey,
no, John, you do a good job. And you know, you were reluctant to be on the podcast with the video. You're doing great. Man, hey, I love it. I love it.
My ugly mug.
Now it's a mutual admiration society. Okay.
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't broke my camera yet. Okay, so now I am not for. So there are RN's Republican National Committee chairs. There are chairpersons. So there's a chairman, there's a chairwoman. There are two people that are running for the chair, Republican Committee chairwoman, Kim Coleman, who I think is a good choice, and Tina Horlocker, I think is a good choice. Both of them are very good choices, folks. You need to hear what they have to say to make that decision. When it comes to the chairman, I've been told that the existing one right now has done a good job, help us come out of the Utah Republican Party, help them get out of debt. A number of people that I trust, including, and I've mentioned his name before, Lowell Nelson, seems to think pretty highly of him. I don't know anyone else when it comes to that race with the guys, the chairman. Do you know of anybody else besides?
I don't, and you know, there's so many people running. It's hard to keep track of them all, and to know what's what. So one of my suggestions is listen to your delegates who have been being bombarded by information from all of these candidates. Go find your local delegate. If you're not a delegate, go find them and talk to them, because they, you know, as a delegate, every time this campaign season comes around, I start dreading it, because I get texts and phone calls and emails, and that's really the job of the delegate.
Hey, my phone's getting blown up. My phone literally is getting blown up all day long.
People complain. They go, "Oh, this is horrible. How did my information?" And I go, "This is the job.
It's what you signed up for. It's what you signed up for."
And so, I mean, I think maybe we need a little education on how to be a delegate. You know.
No kidding.
Okay. I love this delegate system. You know, I'm from California with a K, and when I moved here and found out about it, I went, "This is the greatest thing since sliced bread." It's a participatory republic, you know. And
just think, if we didn't have House Bill 54 all those years ago that allows
HB 54.
HB 54.
It's 10 years old now. 2014 was when it was passed.
We need to do away with it. What I'd really like to see the Republican Party do is just say, okay, we're no longer going to take state dollars. We're going to do this, get to the point where they cannot take state dollars, and then they can run their own thing. And then guess what? Sorry, we can say, no, you either make it through the convention or you don't get on.
Well, that was the original purpose, and somewhere along the line it got diluted. Okay, and the argument, I think, was, well, this makes it more democratic, and I'm going, yeah, but it means somebody with enough money just goes and buys his way out of the ballot. That's just wrong, because
that's exactly what happens.
There are actually companies who go out and will collect signatures for you. You pay them and you get your signatures. It's like, that's not the purpose of a petition. The purpose of a petition is grassroots, not go hire somebody to get it done. It's wrong.
Yes. Okay, let's go to Congressional District 4. congressional district that I live in. The only one that I know of that's running is Burgess Owens. I understand, if I understand correctly, he is running unopposed.
I think so. I think that's correct. Well, he's going to be opposed by a Democrat, but yes. And
At convention, I believe he's the only one. All right, let's go to Congressional District 3. There are 3 people that I think deserve consideration for this. One of them I've interviewed. Another of them has a good track record, but one of them I've not spoken with 2 of them. Mike Kennedy, I think, deserves consideration. Chris Herod has actually been on KMMU with me, so you can go back and look at. I asked him the 23 questions, and then I believe it's J.R. Bird.
J.R. Bird, yeah.
Out in Vernal also deserves your consideration. In my opinion, those are the only 3 that deserve your consideration.
Well, yes, and it's another race where it's a huge plurality. Okay, so you really have to go find these guys and listen to them, meet them. I keep saying it's a big state. Geographically, it's a big state, but these guys are traveling everywhere. So,
oh yeah,
unfortunately, we're down to the wire. Okay, so.
Congressional District 2 and Congressional District 1. I'm not really familiar with those races and who's there.
I'm not either because I'm CD3. Okay, so we need somebody from the other CDs to come and talk to us. But
I will say Blake Moore. I'd like to see someone besides Blake Moore.
I'm not a huge fan of Blake Moore. He keeps voting for spending more money, and I'm going, wait a minute. Blake, come on, have some compassion on your fellow Utahns.
Let's not take so much money out of their pocket.
Oh man.
Those are the only race. So that's the races that I think we're going to be. Is there any other races that you're aware of that we're going to be facing at a convention that I've forgotten?
There's a bunch of local. There's local things that are happening, but I think that covers the big ones. That covers them.
So there's state senators that will be voted upon, I believe, by the state. There may even be. I don't think there's any House members, but I could be wrong on that will be voted at the state convention. But as far as the statewide main convention, my understanding is that's the only offices that will be elected. Dwayne, thanks. So real quickly, this is the first time you're on screen, if I remember correctly. So to the audience, I want to introduce, and you've been on a number of shows. You've been on with Steve Aist. I want to say thank you to you. Dwayne is I'm going to say he's the heart and soul right now of KMMU. He's the tech guy. He's made sure that we're up and running. He's put his own money.
Most of the time, I make sure you're up and running. There are days,
Well, fortunately, you've taken care of me. There hasn't been a day that you haven't helped me out. So
sometimes we have audio glitches, or somebody comes on and they're trying to run from their phone or something like that. But usually we get them solved. So, and even the best, the Glenn Becks of the world, they have their technical issues. The Tim Pools of the world, they have technical stuff go on. But yes, I do what I can to keep you guys running. And we're, I think I said this earlier, we're going to start promoting because we seem to have most of the technical bugs ironed out. All of our hosts are talking, and we're putting on show. I've got over 100 shows in the can since December. Okay. So
wow. I didn't realize that there was that many.
It seems like a big number, but yeah, when you think about it, I got 4 or 5 people a week, one for every day, and we've been running since December. So makes sense,
True. Well, Dwayne, I want to say thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you being here.
Welcome.
To the audience, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being the best part of Main Street Media Utah. Without the audience, without you people coming here and taking a look at this, where would we be? Well, we wouldn't be on air. So,
and one of the things I want to add is we're not big yet, but we haven't been in business for a long time, and we're growing fast. We've had my buddy Adam Bartholomew. Boy, did he catch a tiger by the tail.
Oh yeah, Adam. I want to mention this. Congratulations to his wife Carrie, who I did have on. Unfortunately, she didn't get more than 60%. She didn't get 60% or more in the Utah County convention, because I would have loved to have seen her just be the candidate for Republican, but she's going to a primary. So Carrie Bartholomew, folks, especially you in Utah County, and here's the thing: we've got a couple good ones, folks, out there for the state school board. Bottom line is, you need to support the good ones, and Carrie Bartholomew definitely is.
There are a bunch of good school district, and they're not all women. You know, I was talking to Cole Kelly. He's a fighter. You know, he's running for school board too, and so there are some local seats that are open that will be voted on at convention. Okay, and school board, because it's a state school board. That's why. There are also some local. I'm working with a guy here in Heber. What's his name? His name is Lund, and he's running school board, but it's local school board. It's not state. East County.
Well, Dwayne, I'm going to say thank you for you so much, folks. This has been Talk with Jon. We're going to sign off for the day, and folks, God bless you, and God bless Utah. We will be back next week. Look forward.